So according to the rumor and innuendo, he uses the relationship with Pat to get a couple of tryout matches. And he gets a tryout match where he gets a win over the Brooklyn Brawler and then loses to Owen Hart and Chris Candido. But he shows the decision makers in the company enough to get an opportunity to go train in the USWA. So he's got a spot here now in the USWA, and we'll break down that run in a minute. But at the time, who would have been in those decision-making spots? Is this JR? Is Pat Patterson line it up, puts a word in with JR? JR lines it up, reviews the tape. Is Vince involved in that? Did you see any of the tape?
Actually, it was me, and it was as a favor to Pat. The whole tryout, everything, Pat kept telling me about Dewey Johnson. You got to see Dewey Johnson. That's what they called Dwayne. And Pat asked me, he said, could you just give him a tryout? Could you guys, you always bring it out of page. You always bring people to TV. Bring him to TV and give him a tryout. So brought him out, and I believe that his first match for us, his first tryout was at the Summit in Houston. But we brought him out. He was greener than grass, but he had a presence in the ring,
right.
And he looked good. He looked like an athlete. So we were starting the developmental and thought, well, let's bring him up and put him in developmental and see how he does.
Yeah, there's a phrase in the business called it. Either guys have it or they don't have it. Even in those early tryout matches, and obviously, as you said, he's green as a gourd. Did you think he had it?
He had it walking in the building.
So he had a presence about him, but maybe he just hadn't put it all together yet.
Right, but he walked in. He was cocky, he was confident, and he walked in like he was somebody. So you all of a sudden, he made heads turn because he's a big, good-looking bastard, and you're thinking, oh my God, who is this guy? So he needed to be. I always would tell my brother, hey man, you trained The Rock, and he would always say to me, he goes, no, Rock didn't need to be trained. He just needed to be told what to do with what he had. So he had it.
So when he takes it to the USWA, he's repackaged as, or I guess just packaged since this is his debut, really, Flex Kavana. I don't know what to say here. Flex fucking Kavana.
That was something I think Lawler and Rock came up with. It was, Flex Kavana. And you know why?
Why?
So he could sell pictures. A good-looking baby face that had a great body, and so make him a baby face and give him this crazy name, and he liked it because it sounded exotic, and you can sell gimmicks.
When he's here in the USWA, he wins the tag titles a couple of times, and he has some matches with Jerry Lawler. Were you guys keeping tabs on his progress at USWA? Who's reviewing tape at that time? Or are you just waiting on somebody to call and say, hey, it's time?
No, we're the ones that sent him to Memphis to go down there and work. So it was during a time that we were working with Memphis, and I got the Memphis tapes every single week. So we were keeping tabs on him and watching him every week. There were a few guys that were down there. I don't remember if Kurt was there yet or not, but it was all during that same time frame.
So the word is he gets a call sometime in the summer, I guess, of 1996, and he signs a WWF contract. And he goes to the warehouse, which I guess you guys were calling Trax at the time. Is that right? Where he trained with...
No, Trax didn't come until much later with... that was a Tough Enough thing that they called Trax, which was across the tracks from the TV studio. This time it was in the warehouse of the TV studio. And it was a ring in the middle of the warehouse. And that's all it was. And Tom trained guys.
Including Mark Henry and Brackus, right?
Correct.
What did your brother Tom think at the time when he first got a rookie Rock were his strengths and weaknesses?
Well, considering what he had up until that point of Mark Henry and Brackus, his initial thought was, thank God. He had somebody that knew how to take bumps. He had somebody that understood what the wrestling business was because Rock grew up in it, and someone that really wanted to be a wrestler and had a strong desire to be a wrestler. So he was happy to have Rock in there because it was someone that you could actually see a future for.
So a guy like The Rock, who's in your developmental territory, when he signs the real contract to come up and he's going to start training in the warehouse, would he have had a meeting with Vince McMahon by this point, or would it be once he was shooting vignettes and such before that happened?
No, and I don't even think we shot vignettes with him per se. I really don't even remember. I remember the whole thing about bringing him in his debut in Madison Square Garden and the whole name thing. But, you know, he met Vince obviously when he came up for TV, and he had known Vince since he was a kid. So it was just kind of a reacquainting period. But it was something that Vince always kind of kept an eye on the guys in the warehouse. In Vince's head, you know, he's looking at his star in the warehouse is Mark Henry.
Right.
World's strongest man.
Sure.
And Rock is just a third generation. He's Rocky's kid.
Which at the time could be great or it could be awful. I mean, there's almost no in between. It's either you use this as an opportunity to become a superstar or you're Eric Watts.
Right. Nobody knew.
Right.
So it was, you know, we're going to have to wait and see, but he was definitely progressing a whole hell of a lot faster than anybody else in there. And he had, as you say, he had it.
When do you think the decision was made, and how does the decision become, okay, he's ready? So he's in the warehouse sometime in the summer of 96. By October of 96, you guys are airing vignettes. I know you might not remember them, but you've got Kevin Kelly talking with Rocky outside. He's showing highlights of him doing some things in the ring and lifting weights. It's not like a real a package treatment that you may have done with a $1 Million Man character or Mr. Perfect character, but you're still building some anticipation and introducing him to the audience. So in between that summer and October, I mean, that seems like a pretty quick progression. Who makes the call? Is that something your brother says, guys, he's ready?
No, that was something that we did, and Jim Cornette actually had a lot to do with it. I remember Cornette looking at him going, God damn, he's third generation. Motherfucker looks like a Greek god walking around in there. We got to be able to do something with him. He's a babyface. He can be the champion. And, you know, Vince was a little hesitant, believe it or not, at first. And we got into the argument as to, because everybody called him Dewey.
Right.
And Rock hates that name. It's
well,
like, my name is Dwayne. And so the more he would say that my name's Dwayne, the more that Pat would call him Dewey. But that's how we kind of knew him. And then Cornette was a big proponent of bringing Rock in and starting him. Young, new. Some of
the creative, the drawings are out there. You know, we've all heard about this, where the creative services department, I suppose, would do sketches of what they thought this character might look like. And some of those are floating around. Who would have helped put that together with, I don't know, how would you describe the ring entrance outfit he wore to the ring as Rocky Mavia?
Polynesian. I think I kind of summed it up, and that was I remember, and it's flowing, and they had stuff, you know, hanging from his neck and everything. And when he moves, and it's all flowing, and it's like streamers hanging from his body. But the whole look was to capitalize on the Polynesian feel. And when we kind of, you know, we're going back and forth, what the hell do we name him? And it came up to, you know, the whole Rocky Maivia. You take the first name of his father and the last name of his grandfather, put them together, and it tells you about his legacy right there in his name.
And is that something creative would have put together, or who combines the names?
The name was something that we came up with in Vince's dining room.
So when you explain all of this and show the sketches to Dwayne, who's involved in that? Who's kind of laying it out to him and saying, okay, kid, here's what we got for you?
I want to say that was probably Vince and I that did that with him. You know, when we laid everything out, asked him, because we asked for his input too. You know, what are you comfortable with? What do you like? And at that time, he was just happy to have a job. Right. He was happy to be a part of it.
So chat me up about the way this is laid out, because I think a lot of us have heard that Vince has a tendency to try to really go into sell mode whenever he's trying to explain the gimmick to a performer for the first time. What might it have sounded like as he kind of expressed what his vision of Rocky Maivia was going to be to Dwayne?
God damn, you have to embody everything about your father, the strength, of Rocky, and you have to be able to embrace the heritage of your grandfather, Peter, High Chief Peter Mavia. And it's all embodied in you with the Polynesian flow. But when you get in the ring, we want to see that shuffle like your old man used to do. God damn, pal. It was a tough sell, believe it or not.
Really?
Because Dwayne wanted to be his own man. He didn't want to
ride the coattails.
He didn't want to ride the coattails. Yeah, I guess is the right. He wanted to be his own man. He didn't want to be Rocky Jr. He didn't want to be High Chief Peter Mavia's grandson. He's very proud of his heritage, extremely proud of his heritage, but he wanted to make his own way. And he just thought that, well, is this capitalizing on that too much? And we obviously thought it was perfect for him.
Do you know how Rocky felt about it?
I don't. At the time, I don't. And they were, they've had a kind of off and on relationship for many years. I don't know that it was necessarily on at that time, which might have, helped with Rock not really wanting to take his dad's name. But it was strange over the years. Sometimes they were on, sometimes they were off. But it was over the years. I know that Rocky is extremely proud, that The Rock, became who he is.
I believe, although he may have, had his ups and downs with his dad, he's always been very close with his mother. Wouldn't you agree?
Oh, God, yes. Yeah, he's without a doubt. His mother and his grandmother.
So, you guys have him make his debut in the ring at Survivor Series 1996, and it's kind of an interesting place to debut because that's such a critical show in the history of the company. You've got Mankind taking on The Undertaker, and The Undertaker kind of floats down from the ceiling almost in like a bat-like costume. And then you've got Bret Hart making his in-ring return after a long absence from the company, and he's taking on Stone Cold Steve Austin, and this is Stone Cold's first high-profile match like this, a phenomenal match, very underrated. And then the crowd is just on fire for Sid versus Shawn Michaels. They do the title switch. So there's a lot going on. The NWO is really caught on, and the WWF is trying to play catch-up. And in the middle here, it's kind of a hodgepodge match. Let's run through. This is an interesting thing here. The Rock's team for Survivor Series is Jake the Snake Roberts, who is a little bit of a surprise, Wildman Mark Miro, and the Stalker Barry Windham. And they're taking on Jerry the King Lawler, Hunter Hearst Helmsley, Goldust, and Crush. What an interesting, first of all, the amount of talent on those teams is unbelievable. But what an interesting match, especially kind of in the middle of the card, right?
Yeah, it was one of the Survivor Series. That's when Vince was trying to get away from those Survivor Series tag team matches. So he was like, we'll have one traditional tag team match and one or two, whatever. But it was a way to introduce him. Lawler was in there because he had worked with Lawler in Memphis. We knew we could trust him. Triple H was in there because Triple H was a proven good worker. So you had people in there that would make him shine and make him look good. And then on the other side, I'll tell you another one that was big on The Rock and Rocky Mavia at the time, who was a big supporter, was Jake. And Jake was working with us in the office and in creative at that time too.
And he was sold on him.
Oh God, yes. Yeah. Jake had high hopes for Rocky, and they actually lived in the same apartment building there in Stamford. And Jake had a lot of early influence on The Rock.
Of course, this goes down, as we said, Survivor Series 96. That's November 17th. So it's hard to believe, but it's almost 21 years ago. And this debut actually makes The Rock, or I guess Rocky at the time, the first third-generation wrestler in WWF history. And that's something you guys played off of in a big way. Obviously, from the name on down, the combination of the Polynesian entrance and then, the shuffle. The finish is kind of a shoulder breaker type maneuver. How does that come to be? Do you recall?
I believe that that was Jake's idea, something that would be safe and something that he could do with everybody.
Right.
So that was the reasoning behind it. And, it was, what do we do for a finish? And that was Jake's idea.
It's the traditional Survivor Series elimination match as we laid out. So, of course, it comes down to Rocky in a 2-on-1 situation, taking on both Crush and Goldust. And somehow our new third-generation babyface, the Blue Chipper, as JR called him several times that night, pins both guys. He pins Crush after a flying body press, and then Goldust takes the shoulder breaker for the win. And Rocky is the sole survivor. And I do find it kind of interesting, considering what we're about to break down and what most of you have heard for a long time, that The Rock's debut match in front of a major WWE audience, Triple H is on the other side of the ring. How funny is that?
Well, yeah, and, it's, God, you bring up the Blue Chipper and all that stuff and the vignettes and the hype and everything around it. It was Madison Square Garden, Survivor Series. What a great just card that was. Sure. Overall. And they just shit all over him. I mean, that crowd just shit all over him.